I'm blind. I got back to the apartment late that night, and thinking my roommate was already asleep, I felt my way to my room to get some rest. The next day, the place was swarming with cops. My roommate had been murdered last night. They told me that on the living room wall, written in the victim's blood, were the chilling words, "Lucky you're blind, right?" I have a congenital eye condition. In layman's terms, I'm blind. I wasn't born completely without sight. My vision started to deteriorate after I started middle school. From clear visibility, it gradually declined to blurry, then to the point where I couldn't distinguish a person from a dog from a dozen yards away, and finally to what it is now, complete blindness. The whole process took less than half a year. Luckily, I've adjusted to life without sight. I found a job that supports me, and I share a 2-bedroom apartment with a coworker in a building not far from the office. I like peace and quiet, and I initially wanted to live alone, but my family insisted. They insisted that I live with someone reliable. So if I encountered any unexpected problems, at least I'd have someone to help. John is a decent roommate. He's prompt with the rent and doesn't cause much trouble. Whether he's a reliable person, however, is another matter. For example, he's a playboy. He has a long-distance girlfriend, yet he still brings different women home every few days. He drinks, he boasts. Like that day, he told me early on that he was inviting a few close colleagues over for drinks that night. He invited me to join, but I politely declined. I know how noisy they get when they drink together. A blind person's hearing is more acute. I dislike the noise. So I told him I'd go for my usual walk and return after everyone had left. I took my cane and walked along the lake in my usual park. At 11 p.m. sharp, the alarm I'd set on my phone went off. When John had friends over for drinks, I always came back around this time. It takes about 20 minutes to walk back to the apartment complex from the park, just in time to catch the others leaving and exchange a few pleasantries. It doesn't waste too much time, and it doesn't make me seem like I'm completely avoiding them. The rent here is cheap. It's an old, run-down building with no elevator. 11, 12, 13. I counted the stairs, walked up to the 3rd floor, and took about 33 steps to the left, which would bring me right in front of our door. It was completely silent inside. It was a bit unexpected. I hadn't thought they'd finish so early. I fumbled for my keys, groping in the dark for the cold metal handle. I was about to feel downwards for the keyhole, but the door opened with a push. I muttered to myself, "That kid John, I wonder how much he drank. He even forgot to lock the door." Creak, the door opened. A cold draft chilled my neck, and I couldn't help but shiver. The balcony door was broken and hadn't been fixed. The air inside was filled with the smell of alcohol, tobacco, sweat, and the stillness after a lively gathering, all carried on the night breeze. "I'm back. Finished so early today," I said as I walked in and closed the door behind me. Another creak. The room was so quiet I could hear my own breathing. I was puzzled. "John." I held my breath for a few seconds. No one answered. Only the drip, drip of dripping water responded to me. The kitchen faucet should be fixed, I made a mental note. Had that kid gone out, or was he already asleep? I couldn't tell, and I hesitated about whether to lock the door. I didn't want to be woken up in the middle of the night to open it for him. Then, beside my breathing, I heard someone else's. Heavy, steady, and rhythmic. Though very faint, my hearing is sharp. The breathing seemed to be coming from John's bedroom. "John, are you asleep?" Only the faint breathing answered me in the darkness. I relaxed. It seemed the kid had passed out from drinking. Thinking he was already in his room, I didn't call out to him again. I went to my own room, washed up, and was about to go to sleep when I got a call from a coworker. "Hello. Yes, I'm already home." "John?" "I don't know. He was already asleep in his room when I got back. I haven't spoken to him. If it's work-related, you can find him tomorrow." "Okay, you get some rest too. Good night." After hanging up, I fell asleep without much trouble. Exhausted from the day, I slept soundly that night, until the next morning when a violent pounding on the door woke me up. "Who is it?" I was groggy, and I fumbled my way to the door and opened it. A wave of unfamiliar scents washed over me. People who have lost their sight are always particularly sensitive to other people's scents. It was then that I realized there were many people outside the door, talking, walking, and rummaging through things. They all seemed to be gathered in the living room. "Police," a stranger said gruffly. I heard the rustling of fabric. I think he was showing me his ID. "Police," I repeated in surprise. "What are you doing in my house?" Someone called it in. "Who are you? What are you doing here?" I live here. This is my apartment. Then I gave him my name. Rustling sounds. He was taking down what I said. You were here all night. The officer speaking paused for a few seconds, perhaps noticing my unfocused eyes. You're blind. Realizing this was impolite, he coughed. Yes, I can't see. Who called it in? What happened? I was puzzled, but the person opposite me didn't speak. I wondered if he was waving his hand in front of my eyes, checking if I was really blind. He's clear. We checked with the neighbors. He's blind. A voice said over the shoulder of the man in front of me. It sounded like his colleague. I felt utterly bewildered and couldn't help but ask loudly, what the hell happened? There was a sound of footsteps. Then a new scent, accompanied by the sound of leather shoes on the floor, stopped in front of me. It was the same voice that had called out earlier. Judging from the height of the voice, he was a bit shorter than the previous officer, and his voice was young, but with an authority that was hard to resist. You share this place with someone? I nodded dumbly. What's your roommate's name? John. Why are you asking? A thought forced its way into my mind. Could it be that John? John's dead. I gasped. My mind went blank. I felt my legs weaken and the world spun. The young officer continued. John's girlfriend called him over a dozen times this morning and couldn't reach him. She asked a delivery guy to use the spare key under the doormat to open the door. As soon as he opened the door, he was scared out of his wits and immediately called the police. When we and the paramedics arrived, we found him in his bedroom. Unfortunately, your roommate was already dead. Based on the scene, we have every reason to believe it was a homicide. I barely heard the second half of the officer's words. John was dead? No. To be precise, he was murdered? Here? In our apartment? A chill ran down my spine. Right next door. Having briefly lost the ability to think rationally, I asked blankly, how did he die? He was stabbed in the chest, a single fatal blow. But the murder weapon wasn't found at the scene. A fruit knife is missing from the kitchen knife block. That was a new set of knives I just bought. The two officers exchanged a look. It seemed they had confirmed the murder weapon. Are you going to arrest me? According to procedure, we need you to cooperate with the investigation. Able-bodied people often have a natural sympathy for those with disabilities. Perhaps it was out of sympathy for me that the young officer's tone softened. But don't worry, you've been cleared as a suspect. Huh? I was stunned. Then, I suddenly remembered something. The young officer said John died in his bedroom, and his bedroom door doesn't directly face the entrance. So why was the delivery guy scared out of his wits as soon as he opened the door? What did he see? The taller officer sighed and patted my shoulder. You're really lucky. A blessing in disguise, I guess. I didn't understand. The young officer picked up the thread. The killer wrote something on the living room wall. What? Don't faint when I tell you. I took a deep breath, trying to brace myself. Tell me. There's a line of words on the wall, seemingly written in blood. Lucky you're blind, right? His voice seemed to stretch on amidst the buzzing in my ears. Which means when you came home last night, you ran right into the killer. He might have been standing in the corner, silently watching your every move. It took me a while to recover from the shock and lingering fear. The young officer was named Lynn, newly joined the force and responsible for taking my statement. Let's find a quieter place, Officer Tom said, patting my shoulder and handing me my white cane. Yeah, I agree with Officer Tom. Listening to the buzzing gossip of the busybodies packed around the perimeter of the police tape, it was definitely too noisy here. Oh my God, that's terrifying, an older woman exclaimed, dramatically clutching her chest. Asterisk terrifying, and yet she's still sticking around. Asterisk. Who died? Who died? A voice, sounding like a troublemaking young punk, asked. Asterisk not me. Sorry to disappoint. Asterisk. I heard the killer is a psycho. A shaky, elderly voice said. Despite his age, he sounded remarkably energetic when talking about a psycho killer. Huh? How do you know? The older woman asked, surprised. The punk chimed in. Haven't you heard? The killer wrote something on the wall in blood. Oh, come off it. It's true. I heard it from the delivery guy who reported it. What did it say? Fear and curiosity mixed. The old man's voice lowered, and a few seconds later, gasps erupted from the crowd. As I followed Officer Tom past the police tape, the crowd gasped again. I could hear them whispering. Is that him? Must be. There's no other blind guy around here. Wow, so intense. An excited shiver ran through the onlookers like an electric current. Suddenly, someone grabbed my arm. Quick interview. How exciting was it to be in the same room as a murderer? With one person breaking the ice, others swarmed around, chattering. What did you feel at the time? Are you scared to death now, haha? Were you in cahoots with the killer? How could you not notice a big guy entering your home? I think you're the killer. Stop pretending. Watch your back. You might get silenced. Finally, with Officer Tom's intervention, I managed to escape the whirlpool of public opinion. Even though I couldn't see, I could feel their eyes glued to my back. After the series of blows I'd already suffered that morning, I felt increasingly parched and weak as I broke free from the crowd. Officer Tom found a nearby coffee shop. "One espresso, please." "What would you like?" "Just plain water," I replied weakly. People get excited when they encounter a murder case, as long as it doesn't involve them, of course. I nodded, my face pale. Officer Tom offered a few words of comfort, then officially began the questioning. "How did you know the victim, John?" "We worked at the same company." "What company?" I gave him the company name, adding, "It's a game company." He looked at me skeptically. I knew what he was thinking. A blind person working at a game company? I explained that I helped them test the accessibility features in their games, the assistive technologies developed for visually impaired players like myself, such as audio cues and haptic feedback. But I knew that was just a pretext for hiring me. There were tax breaks for local companies that employed people with disabilities. That was probably the real reason I was hired. My actual job at the company was more like being a mascot, mostly chatting and gossiping with different people every day. Officer Tom seemed to understand, vaguely. "What did John do?" "He was a programmer." He changed the subject, asking me to recount what I remembered about last night. I told him truthfully that when we left work, John told me he was inviting a few close colleagues over for drinks and to hang out, and asked if I wanted to join. I declined, deciding to take a walk in the nearby park and return when they were about to finish. "Do you know who was coming over for drinks?" "Fatty, Skinny, Baldy, and Taylor and Henry." "Their real names?" I told Officer Tom their full names. "Go on." I wandered around outside for a while and got back home around 11:20 p.m., no later than 11:30. "Are you sure?" I nodded, telling him about setting an alarm on my phone and how long it took to walk back from the park to the apartment. Officer Tom was very meticulous, asking me to describe the exact location in the park I walked from. I figured they would probably double-check the time it took later. When I got home, I hesitated. Officer Tom guessed what I was about to say and nodded. I'm afraid John had already been attacked, and the killer was still at the scene. The medical examiner estimated the time of death between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. Now, it seemed highly likely it was around 11:20, significantly narrowing down the investigation. Could the killer be one of those five guys? I found it hard to believe, since we all worked together. According to neighbors, the five of them left around 10:30 p.m. We can't rule out the possibility of one of them returning to commit the crime. But the door wasn't locked when I got home. Anyone could have gone in and killed John, right? There were no signs of a struggle, and no valuables were missing. It's likely a revenge killing by someone he knew, but we'll investigate every possibility. I thought about it, and Officer Tom's point made sense. Just then, the waitress brought our drinks. Officer Tom put 2 sugar cubes in his cup, then pushed my water towards me. Who knew about the spare key under the doormat? John's close friends probably all knew. I don't know exactly who knew and who didn't. Because our old apartment complex is close to the company, John's close colleagues often came over after work for drinks. Sometimes, if John was working late, they'd use the spare key to let themselves in and put it back under the mat. Among the 5 people you mentioned, did anyone have a grudge against John? Henry, I blurted out without hesitation. He always thought John stole his chance for a promotion and raise. That was 2 months ago. Henry had complained to me about it privately a few times. They still drank together, even with that resentment? I'm not sure. Maybe they got along otherwise. What is it? Officer Tom stopped writing and looked at me. Why don't you suspect me? Of course, I don't want to be suspected, but I just find it a bit strange. We certainly considered the possibility that you killed him, wrote those words on the wall, and pretended that there was a third person in the house when you returned. The killer had wrapped a towel from John's bedroom around their finger to get blood on it, and deliberately wrote messily to disguise their handwriting. Even though I couldn't see, as long as I was familiar with the layout of the room, I could still have done it. So why not? Because the scene was too clean. Officer Tom sat up straight, his tone becoming very serious, making me nervous as well. There were no signs of a struggle. John was killed in his sleep with a single stab wound. The killer needed to aim before striking. He took the murder weapon with him and carefully cleaned up the scene. We didn't find any usable fingerprints. This requires a rational, clear-headed person who can see. By the same logic, Liu Yunju, also known as Fatty, was also ruled out. Why? According to the others, Liu Yunju drank the most last night. He was completely wasted and was unconscious when he was put in a taxi. If he had come back to kill John, the scene wouldn't have been so clean. My colleagues contacted the taxi driver and got the same testimony. So, it's one of the other four. 3. Taylor, the one you called Smoker, has a solid alibi. After leaving John's place, he ordered some skewers at a roadside barbecue stall. The owner remembers him well. He stayed there until almost 12, so he didn't have time to commit the crime. I couldn't help but picture the other 3. In my mind, Skinny had a shrewd look, Baldy looked tough, and Henry wore a sinister smile. Which one of them, at the murder scene last night, silently watched me, knife in hand? 2 red dots emerged in the darkness, a blurry human silhouette, a suppressed, breathing sound. I remembered something else. I swallowed, wanted to wet my lips with some water, but my throat remained dry. Officer, was there any liquid dripping vertically onto the floor or anywhere else at the scene? Are you talking about drip stains? Yes, there were, right at the door of the victim's bedroom. The medical examiner believes the killer stood at the door for a few seconds, holding the weapon, and blood dripped from it. Officer Tom was a little surprised. How did you know? I smiled bitterly. How did I know? Because I heard it last night. Drip, drip, the sound of dripping blood. Officer Tom asked me some more questions, and I answered truthfully. Later that afternoon, they finished their forensic investigation of the apartment. John's bedroom and part of the living room were sealed off with police tape. No entry allowed. I was given permission to go back and get some everyday clothes. I planned to stay in a hotel for the time being. Need any help? Officer Tom asked me as he was leaving. I shook my head, thanking him for his kindness, but I didn't want to delay his work. I'd rather they catch the killer as soon as possible. Going back into the apartment, it felt even more sinister than when I'd left that morning. The draft from the balcony seemed to carry the scent of John's blood, his corpse, and his lingering resentment, seeping in through the collar of my shirt and raising goosebumps all over my skin. The north-facing rooms didn't get much sunlight in the afternoon, and I hugged myself tighter in my thin clothes. It wasn't warm for early spring, and whether it was psychological or not, I felt freezing. Right now, I just wanted to get out of there. I opened the door to my room, pulled my suitcase out from under the bed, and threw a few clothes onto the bed. I took a quick trip to the bathroom. Flush. Amid the sound of the flushing toilet, I heard a discordant note. Click. I knew that sound all too well. It was the sound of a door lock opening. I felt my heart skip a beat, every muscle in my body tensing instantly. My fingers in the middle of fastening my belt froze, stiff as boards. I have a habit of locking doors, but I couldn't remember if I'd locked it behind me when I came in. Did I lock the door or not? The more I tried to remember, the more my mind went blank. Not daring to breathe, I held my breath and listened for any movement outside the bathroom. Several seconds passed, and there was nothing, just as I thought I might have misheard and was about to relax. A tiny sound pierced the stagnant air. Creak. My heart hammered uncontrollably. The door had opened. Someone had come in. Every hair on my body stood on end. The person opening the door was carefully controlling it to avoid making any noise. I could almost picture them gripping the doorknob with all their strength, opening it inch by agonizing inch. It definitely wasn't the police. Who was it? A nosy neighbor or the murderer? Standing in the cramped bathroom, I felt short of breath, my fingers going numb. What did they want here? To retrieve evidence? Or to kill me and silence me? But I really didn't know anything. I needed to call the police. Yes, call the police. I frantically searched all my pockets, realizing with despair that I'd left my phone outside. What should I do now? Pretending no one was here was impossible. The suitcase on the bed, the scattered clothes, the phone in the bedroom, all of it clearly indicated someone was here. Then, I heard a faint rustling sound. The grit from the soles of shoes falling onto the wooden floor, rubbing against the soft soles, creating a tiny noise. It stopped right outside the bathroom door. My heart nearly stopped beating. He was waiting for me to come out. I forced myself to calm down. The only option was to act like I didn't know anything. If I panicked, it might lead to my death. I pretended I just finished using the toilet, flushed again, and then, summoning all my courage, slowly opened the bathroom door. It was extremely quiet outside, but I could hear it, close by, the warm sound of breathing. The person was in the room. A chill ran down my spine. I desperately wanted to bolt out the door and run as far as I could, but I couldn't let him detect anything unusual. I looked straight ahead, groping my way to where I'd left my phone. As soon as my hand touched the spot, my heart sank again. The phone was gone. Utterly desperate, I forced myself to go back to the suitcase, wanting to shove all my clothes in at once, grab the suitcase, and run. What did this person want? It wasn't to kill me, otherwise they would have done it when I came out of the bathroom. I pretended to casually put my clothes into the suitcase. Soft fibers, an uneven woven texture. It was a thin sweater. A stiffer material, rough surface, tightly woven. I folded the jeans and put them in the suitcase. Smooth linen, soft and comfortable, a shirt. I trembled as I folded the clothes, my hand instinctively reaching to the side. A soft, delicate touch, a warm, soft thing. A human hand. I screamed, snatching my hand back like lightning. When I cautiously reached out again, the feeling of the hand was gone, replaced by a cold, rectangular object, my phone. Strange. Was that my imagination? I was still shaken, knowing full well what was going on, but I had to pretend I didn't know anything for the person's benefit. I zipped up the suitcase, a huge weight lifted from my heart, and without hesitation, I turned and left. My fear was like boiling water. I even bumped into the doorframe on my way out. Ignoring the pain in my forehead, I suppressed the urge to run, dragging the suitcase, and walked away step by step. It wasn't until I'd walked out of the building, into the community square, and heard the sounds of the neighborhood committee members playing cards and chatting that I finally felt relieved. It was like I'd crawled out of hell and seen the sunlight, and I took deep, gasping breaths. Even in the chilly spring air, my back was soaked with sweat. It seemed I had to do something. After that night's scare, I didn't sleep a wink. Tossing and turning all night meant I showed up at the office the next day with huge dark circles under my eyes. Unsurprisingly, the office seemed calm on the surface, but as soon as the managers were out of sight, the gossip mill went into overdrive. Did you hear? John was murdered. That's old news. Haven't you heard the latest? The killer works here. Sure, the boss is coming, keep it down. Naturally, there was even more talk around my area. Everyone must have heard about how I practically bumped into the killer on my way home. Just after lunch break, an intern came over. Hey, did you really not notice anything last night? I just sighed. She persisted. What about smells? I heard people who can't see have really sharp other senses. Could you maybe identify which one of them it was by their scent? As if I'm a bloodhound. Everything was normal, I said, which was the truth. Another woman chimed in. I bet you 10 packs of spicy strips it was Baldy. Why? Haven't you heard? Last night, Baldy and John got into a drunken argument over the new girl in the design department. The new art director? Although I'd never seen this new person, from everyone else's descriptions, I could imagine she was a stunning beauty, rivaling a famous actress, and the object of many a single guy's affection at the company. Programmers are notoriously single, and guys like John, the playboy, are the exception. Hearing there was juicy gossip, everyone subtly stopped working and gathered around. What? Ex-girlfriend. Baldy was expressing his admiration for the goddess, and John mocked him, saying he should look in the mirror, that if he had the charm to attract that kind of woman, he wouldn't still be a virgin in his 20s, and that he'd already been with the girl, that she was dry, and only someone desperate like Baldy would want sloppy seconds. Who told you that? Taylor. He was blabbing about last night all over the office this morning. That guy's probably the most relaxed of everyone, an older employee said knowingly. He seemed pleased to have everyone's attention. I have a childhood friend on the police force, and I got a little info from him. The police have ruled out Taylor and Fatty. One has a solid alibi, and the other was too drunk to be capable of doing it. The young intern mused. So, it's like one of those classic Conan 3 suspect scenarios? Skinny, Baldy, and Henry. I think it's Skinny. I accidentally saw his video, streaming favorites once. He's into all that violent, gory stuff. Seems like the type who could do something like this. But Skinny doesn't have a motive, does he? I heard from a friend in HR that someone reported Skinny for abusing animals and posting videos of it online, which is bad for the company's image. Skinny and John were close. What if John was the one who reported him? That would be a motive, wouldn't it? If we're talking about who has the most motive, I'd vote for Baldy. He looks mean and has a bad temper. He could have gotten angrier and angrier on the way home and decided to kill John. The older programmer added seriously. Baldy said he went to an internet cafe to play games after leaving John's place, but that cafe's security cameras happened to be broken and no one remembers seeing him. Knowing he had such inside information, the others got even more excited. What about Skinny and Henry? Do they have alibis? Well, people were getting impatient. Some offered cigarettes, others offered their newly delivered bubble tea, and finally, he decided to spill the beans, speaking slowly. Skinny and Henry said they walked home together, but there's no third party to confirm their story. Someone clapped their hands. I know. Skinny and Henry are accomplices. Skinny and Henry have always been close, and because Henry had been harboring resentment toward John for a long time, they teamed up to kill John. One did the deed, the other kept watch. No, I interrupted. There was only one killer. The other sounded puzzled. How do you know? I said mysteriously, because last night, in that room, besides myself, I only heard one person's breathing. Perhaps my words made them imagine the terrifying scene, facing a murderer without knowing it. Everyone fell silent. Do you all have nothing to do? The project manager's thunderous roar jolted everyone out of their chilling imaginations, and they hurried back to their workstations. After the manager moved away, whispers started again. Did that old Baldy eat gunpowder today? Why is he in such a bad mood? Hey, I heard his affair with a younger woman was almost discovered by his wife. He must be on edge. More gossip? Tell me everything. The girl said mysteriously. This all started with a mysterious blackmail letter. I already knew what she was going to say and wasn't interested, so I got up with my cane, intending to go to the restroom. The building our company was in, was under renovation, and the restrooms were out of water. To use the restroom, we had to walk across the sky bridge to Building B. It wasn't lunch break, so the corridor was empty. In the long, narrow space, the sound of my footsteps echoed off the walls and ceiling. Tap, tap, tap. I was thinking about the information I just gathered. The police's main suspects were Skinny, Baldy, and Henry. Which one was it? Contrary to everyone else's guesses, I didn't think Baldy had the guts. He was a blustering coward, appearing to have a bad temper, but actually just putting on a show. Even if he got drunk enough, I doubt he'd have the courage to commit murder, and he definitely wouldn't have the self-control to remain calm. Like Officer Tom said, the person who did this must be meticulous and calm. Besides that, there was something else I was more concerned about. Just then, tap, 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 tap. Another set of footsteps echoed in the empty corridor. I sped up, and the footsteps behind me sped up too. I stopped, and the footsteps stopped. This time I was sure it wasn't my imagination. Someone was behind me. I instinctively tightened my grip on my cane and, gathering my courage, called out, "Who's there?" The footsteps faded away into silence. Is that Skinny? Was it Baldy or Henry? Were they here to silence me? Or just to observe me again? Tap, tap, tap. The unfamiliar footsteps returned, quicker this time, rapidly approaching. My nerves were on edge. I gripped the cane with both hands, ready to defend myself. The footsteps grew closer, and I couldn't hold back a shout as I swung the cane in front of me. Don't hit, it's me." Taylor suddenly appeared from the backlight, and I instantly deflated, my hands going limp as I lowered my cane. He was one of the first people I met at this company. When I first started, I felt so out of place, and Taylor's joking personality helped me a lot. I was a little annoyed with him. I asked you who it was. Why didn't you answer? I was too far away. I couldn't hear what you were saying. Taylor chuckled, and then I heard the click of a lighter. He had a solid alibi. The barbecue stall owner and several customers could vouch for him. In other words, I was safe now. He offered me a lit cigarette, and I took a drag. Taylor exhaled a long breath and said, "I just came out for some air and saw you up ahead. Gave you a fright, huh?" I wasn't sure if he was referring to just now or last night, but either way, I'd definitely been scared. "Didn't you go back home to see about your eyes a while ago? How'd it go?" I shook my head. No change. Oh, that's rough. It's okay. I'm used to it. Taylor changed the subject. It's hard to believe I was just talking to John yesterday, and now he's dead. But with the things he was saying, such venomous words. He had it coming. From the sound of it, Taylor was convinced Baldy was the killer. I was less certain. Would someone really kill over someone insulting the person they admire? Pa, Taylor spat. Insulting is putting it mildly. You weren't there yesterday. You didn't see how disgusting John was, going on and on about how he used that girl, and after he was done with her, he acted all disgusted with her. What man could stand to hear the woman he worships be insulted like that? Taylor grew increasingly agitated, his voice rising. It seemed he completely empathized with Baldy. Maybe, perhaps disliking my vague response, Taylor asked, "What? You don't think it was Baldy?" "Trust me, he's definitely capable of something impulsive like that." "I know, but because he's so hot-headed and impulsive, even if he did kill someone in the heat of the moment, he'd definitely leave a lot of clues behind. Who knows about that kind of thing?" Taylor clearly wasn't convinced. "By the way, I heard you heard the killer breathing when you came in." "Yeah," Taylor muttered. "Didn't know you blind folks had such good hearing." The sound came from John's bedroom. I thought it was John sleeping. Thinking about it now, it's terrifying. "You can say that again." Taylor agreed, nodding. "Any normal person would have been killed by the murderer." "Not necessarily, as long as I didn't turn on the light," I said offhandedly, and a chilling story I'd heard a long time ago came to mind without warning. "Huh? What do you mean? Have you heard that creepy story?" A girl came back to her dorm late at night, and to avoid waking up her roommate, she got into bed in the dark. When she woke up, there were a lot of police in the room. Her roommate had been murdered and dismembered. There was a line of blood on the wall that read, "Aren't you glad you didn't turn on the light?" Ugh, that's terrifying. Do you think the killer knew that story too? You mean deliberately imitating it? Was psycho. It's one thing to get away with murder, but to write something like that to scare others. I was suddenly struck by a thought. Taylor, unaware of my change, continued to smoke and lament the unpredictability of life and the tragedy of human nature. Shaken by my realization, I made an excuse to leave as quickly as possible. Before parting ways, I asked Taylor to have a drink with me after work tonight. "It'll be a send-off for John." Taylor nodded. "It'll be a send-off for John." I used the excuse of not feeling well to leave work early. Given what had happened to me, no one questioned it. In a taxi, I kept turning over my realization, and the more I thought about it, the more certain I became. After a few minutes of deliberation, I finally made up my mind. My fingers trembled slightly with excitement as I dialed the number. After a beep, the call connected. "Hello." Officer Tom's voice came from the other end. "It's me." I gave my name, then blurted out, "About John's death. I think I know who the killer is. Could I have an espresso, please?" "Thank you." We met at the cafe, and Officer Tom ordered the same coffee as last time. I opted for a latte this time. After folding up my white cane and putting it away, I couldn't wait to get down to business. "Any leads from the police?" "We're still investigating," Officer Tom said vaguely. It was only natural, of course. He wouldn't just casually reveal specific investigation details to a civilian like me. From his tone, it seemed they hadn't made much progress. "You said you knew who the killer was? Did you remember some crucial clue?" "Yes and no. I just suddenly realized a blind spot that's been in our thinking all along." "What is it?" "The motive." Officer Tom furrowed his brow slightly. "Motive?" Then a flash of understanding. "I see. Maybe to someone without formal training like yourself, a motive for murder is easily overlooked. But to us police, it's obviously." No. I quickly shook my head, cutting him off. "I don't mean the motive for murder. I've read detective novels. I know that's basic criminal investigation 101. "Then what do you mean?" Unable to contain my excitement, I lowered my voice. "The motive for writing the blood message." "The blood message?" "Exactly. Imagine you're the killer. Whatever your motive for killing at that moment after the murder, you'd be extremely nervous or at the very least unsettled. While cleaning up the scene, you suddenly hear the doorknob turn. Someone's coming back. Your heart leaps into your throat, but then you realize it's me, a blind man, walking in, and you relax. Because you know I'm blind, and as long as you don't make any noise, I won't know what happened." The cafe server brought our coffees. Officer Tom also grabbed a few sugar cubes from the small tray on the table. stirring his coffee while listening to me intently. And it happened just as you thought. I called out to John a few times and, getting no response, assumed he was asleep, so I went back to my room to rest. If you were the killer, after going through that roller coaster of intense fear and relief, you'd be relieved, right? At that point, you'd definitely want to clean up the scene quickly and get out of there. Just like I did that day, packing my luggage in the room. After escaping, I just wanted to leave as fast as possible without any thought or energy for anything else. But the killer did do something else. He left a blood message on the wall. A normal person would just want to leave as soon as possible, but the killer wasn't flustered. He even took the time to leave a blood message. It's the psychological motivation behind this change that made me realize who the killer is. Officer Tom, what do you think the killer's purpose was in leaving the blood message? Officer Tom had been listening calmly. When asked, he responded, equally calm, to show off, to provoke, to taunt, and to create panic. Obviously, he had already analyzed this. That's why I believe it had to be Skinny. Of the 3 remaining suspects, only he has that kind of psychological makeup. Oh, first, Skinny had a motive. I learned this from a colleague. Someone anonymously reported Skinny to HR for abusing cats. He and John were close, so it's very likely John did it. Skinny killed John in revenge. Second, Skinny is a twisted person. He enjoys watching gory movies and abuses cats in private to vent. He's a psychopath. If it had been Baldy or Henry, after realizing I hadn't discovered their crime scene, they'd be scared and would have cleaned up and run. Only someone as twisted as Skinny would do something like writing on the wall with the victim's blood. That's right. This was the analysis I presented to Officer Tom. I have been pondering the killer's motive for taking the extra step of leaving a blood message on the wall. I continued. From this action, it's easy to conclude that the killer is a psychopath. So, all we need to do is find the psychopath among the remaining 3, right? After listening quietly to my analysis, Officer Tom wasn't as excited as I was. He sighed softly. We need evidence to make an arrest. Everything you've said so far is speculation. Do you have any concrete evidence? I was a little taken aback. Skinny abusing cats, isn't that proof of his psychopathy? Officer Tom began to correct me. First, regarding the report about Skinny abusing animals, we also learned about it during our interviews, but there's no evidence proving that Skinny actually did it. Second, even if his animal abuse is a proven fact, it doesn't mean his psychological problems are as severe as you claim. Furthermore, even if he has serious psychological problems, it doesn't mean he killed John. Officer Tom's step-by-step analysis left me stunned, but I still wanted to defend my discovery. I continued to steer the focus back to the blood message motive. But if we analyze it from the perspective of why the killer left the blood message, it clearly points to Skinny, doesn't it? Isn't that enough to confirm that Skinny is the killer? Ignoring other evidence and focusing solely on the blood message, Skinny is indeed the prime suspect. But it's also possible. What? It's also possible that you've misidentified the motive. You mean the killer might not have written those words with John's blood because of psychopathic mindset? Officer Tom took out a pen and paper. I heard the sound of the ballpoint pen scratching against the rough surface of the paper. Your line of thinking is sound. The more a killer does at a crime scene, the more likely they are to leave clues. Taking the trouble to write a blood message on the living room wall must have had a reason. What was the killer's purpose in leaving the blood message? The first possibility, the one we just discussed, is to show off and make you afraid. Are there any other possibilities? Judging by his tone, he had already thought of another possibility. I thought hard about the events from the crime to the discovery of the body, and a light bulb went off. Is it possible that the content of the blood message itself isn't important, but the blood message itself is? Exactly. It seemed I had thought of the same thing as Officer Tom. As he wrote down this possibility, he said, "Do you remember the delivery guy who reported the case? He didn't call the police because he found the body in the room, but because he saw the bloody red words on the wall. Let's assume there was no message. What would have happened? The delivery guy wouldn't have immediately realized something was wrong. He would have had to walk into John's room to see the body. Or maybe he wouldn't have gone in at all. He might have just opened the door, seen no one inside, and left." Exactly. The delivery guy's appearance was an unexpected event. We'll set that aside for now. If John's girlfriend hadn't thought to ask him to check on John that morning, When do you think John's body would have been discovered? That day was a Friday. His phone was dead, and when I called for him at home, he didn't answer. I might have thought he'd gone out partying before I woke up, which was typical of John. It might have been until Monday during work hours before anyone realized something was wrong. Officer Tom said, therefore, the second possibility is that the killer wanted the body to be discovered immediately. I pondered for a moment, but there's a problem with that theory, too. Tell me, according to your theory, the killer couldn't have anticipated that John's long-distance girlfriend would ask the delivery guy to check on him the next morning. Without that interruption, leaving the blood message would have been useless if he really wanted the body to be discovered quickly. I can't see it. If it hadn't been for that unlucky delivery guy, the reality would have been that I'd have gotten up as usual and gone about my day. Whether the blood message was there or not would have made no difference. To make a blind person discover the body immediately, the killer should have taken other measures. Officer Tom agreed with me. That's a good point. But it's also possible that the killer had originally planned for the body to be discovered the next morning, perhaps by arranging some excuse to visit. The delivery guy's appearance just happened to fulfill his intentions. After saying that, even he realized the flaw in this theory. If the killer had really planned for this, such as using an excuse to visit John, why bother leaving the message on the wall? Taking a few more steps would have revealed the body. It would have been a difference of only a few minutes. It seems we can rule out the second possibility, I said. Yes. After that, we both fell into a long silence, stumped by this riddle. Suddenly, Officer Tom clapped his hands, as if waking from a dream. What is it? I was startled. I get it. I understand. The young officer's voice was filled with excitement. You solved it. It's just a guess, but my gut tells me this time it's right. I need to go back to the station. I can't tell you more, as it involves investigating a suspect. But I want to thank you. The line of thinking you suggested gave me a huge breakthrough. Officer Tom left in a hurry, not even finishing his coffee. I saw him again the next afternoon in an interrogation room at the police station. He brought me 2 pieces of news, each more shocking than the last. First, the person who killed John was Taylor. Second, Taylor died last night. Taylor's dead. I was completely stunned, my mind a blank. When the cops showed up at the office saying they needed my help with the investigation, I thought they caught John's killer. I never expected to be hit with such shocking news. In the interrogation room, Officer Tom sat across from me, another officer beside him. How did he die? I asked. Officer Tom said, gas poisoning. Was it an accident or... Officer Tom didn't answer my question. His voice was the same as it had been the last few times, calm and even. The coroner estimates Taylor died between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. yesterday from carbon monoxide poisoning. We found a gas valve open in the kitchen. Traces of sleeping pills were found in Taylor's system. After reviewing the timeline, we discovered you were the last person to see Taylor alive. Me? I remembered what Taylor had said while smoking. Yesterday I was talking to John, and now he's dead. I felt the same way now. Last night, I was drinking with Taylor, and today we were separated by life and death. Officer Tom tapped the table with his pen cap. Start from your meeting last night. What time? Around 7 p.m.? Maybe a little later. I can't remember exactly. It was at a barbecue place near the office. They should have a record of the transaction, with the exact time. What did you talk about? I try to remember. Just normal stuff. Be specific. Mostly reminiscing about John and complaining about him. After all, the main reason we met up last night was to send John off. We talked about some things that happened at the company, nothing else really. Since you talked about John's death, did you mention any analysis of the case to Taylor? Officer Tom asked. What do you mean? Like what you told me yesterday afternoon? The officer reminded me. I suddenly understood, nodding repeatedly. Yeah, I figured since Taylor had a solid alibi, he was just an innocent person caught up in it like me. I thought it would be okay to talk to him about it. What exactly did you say? The officer pressed. Pretty much the same as I told you yesterday. I told him my theory about Skinny being the real killer and that you didn't agree. I also said that you and I had ruled out the second possibility. Oh, right. I remembered. I also told Taylor that John would soon be able to rest in peace. He asked me what I meant, and I told him that you, Officer Tom, had a lead and that the real killer would likely be caught soon. Officer Tom and the other officer exchanged a glance. Then he leaned in and confirmed with me in a low voice. Are you sure you said that to him? I nodded firmly. Did Taylor have any unusual reaction? I scratched my face and adjusted my sunglasses. He paused for a long time and then said, "Oh, really? That's good." I thought it was strange. His reaction was so flat. Shouldn't he be happy that the killer was going to be caught? We talked for a bit longer, and soon after, Taylor said he was feeling tired and wanted to go home. So we paid the bill and left. What time did you leave? Around 9 p.m. What does this have to do with Taylor's death? I heard the two officers whispering to each other. A minute later, Officer Tom said to me, "We have good reason to believe that Taylor committed suicide after realizing his crime was about to be exposed." But didn't Taylor have a solid alibi? John's time of death was around 11:20 p.m. At that time, Taylor was at a street-side barbecue stand, and he didn't leave until almost midnight. The owner of the stand and several customers remembered him. Could they have given false testimony? No, we investigated. Taylor's alibi witnesses didn't know him before, and their testimonies are reliable. What's going on? You have to ask yourself a question. Why did you think John was killed around 11:20 p.m.? Why else? Wasn't it determined by the coroner? Officer Tom shook his head. No, the coroner only estimated that John died between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. I was stunned, and then it hit me. Because I got home around 11:20 p.m. Exactly, and the killer was at the scene at that time. So we made that reasonable assumption. So the question is, how do we know the killer was committing the crime at that time? Because of the bloody words on the wall. Lucky to be blind, right? Goosebumps crawled up my arms, but this time for a completely different reason. Anyone who saw that sentence would immediately think that the killer was in the room when I got home, but because I was blind and didn't know what was happening, he spared me. However, this was just the killer's way of misdirecting us. Misleading people into thinking the time of the murder was around 11:20 p.m., making people believe that he was already in the room before at least 11:20. But in reality, it's very likely that the killer hadn't acted yet when I got home. As for why the killer did this, I murmured, because he had a solid alibi until midnight. Officer Tom flipped through his notes. Earlier, when you gave your statement, you said you received a call from a colleague before you went to sleep. According to the call records, the call came in at 11:36 p.m. The person who called you was Taylor, right? That's right. I recalled the scene. Taylor called, and the first thing he asked was if I had gotten home. Then he said that he seemed to have left some documents at John's place, and asked if John was still awake. I told him that John had already gone to sleep before I got home, and that he should talk to him tomorrow. Officer Tom said to me, "Let's go through it from the beginning." At 8 p.m., John invited Taylor, Skinny, and 3 other colleagues to his house for drinks. During the gathering, John got into an argument with Baldy. According to the others present, after the big fight with Baldy, John was in a bad mood and drank a lot. He ended the gathering early, saying, "That's enough for today. I've had too much to drink, and I'm tired." The 5 of them left the apartment at 10:30 p.m. We don't know exactly when Taylor decided to kill John. The only thing we can be sure of is that it was after 10:30 p.m. Why? Because it ended earlier than usual. You didn't run into them when you got home. That's right. In the past, I usually left around 11 p.m. and would run into them packing up to leave. As for whether Taylor had a plan and then decided to go to the barbecue stand to establish an alibi, or whether he came up with the plan on the spot at the barbecue stand, he's dead now, so we'll never know. But it doesn't matter. Sometime between 10:30 p.m. and 11:20 p.m., Taylor decided to take advantage of this unpleasant, prematurely ended gathering to kill John. He knew your habits. He knew you'd be home around 11:20 p.m., but he couldn't be sure that you'd go straight to your room after you got home. If you talked to John and knew that John was still alive at that time, his plan would be ruined. So, at 11:36 p.m., he made up an excuse to call you and check if you had interacted with John. After learning that you had gone straight to your room, he decided to act. Just before midnight, he left the barbecue stand, opened the door with the spare key under the carpet, killed John, and cleaned up the scene. Then he left the bloody message on the wall to create the illusion that the killer was at the scene around 11:20 p.m. I listened to Officer Tom's account, dumbfounded. I never imagined that someone was carrying out such a cold-blooded and cruel plan just a wall away from my sleeping room. But what about the motive? Why would Taylor kill John? They had no. My voice trailed off, and I remembered Taylor's indignant expression at the time. What man could stand to see his goddess insulted like that? With such a sharp tongue, no wonder people hate him. At the time, I thought he was just standing up for Baldy, but it turned out he was taking the opportunity to express his own feelings. Officer Tom continued. Afterwards, everything went as Taylor planned. Because of that bloody message, we moved John's time of death to between 11 p.m. and 11:30 p.m., and he had a solid alibi, so he was ruled out as a suspect. But he didn't expect you to inadvertently provide us with a clue. Why did the killer leave the bloody message? Although your conclusion was wrong, your starting point was correct. It was because of your inspiration that we were able to follow the clues. After learning from you that the police had begun to suspect the killer's motive for writing the bloody message, Taylor knew he was about to be exposed. He took sleeping pills, turned on a gas valve, and committed suicide. We found a murder weapon used to kill John in his house. Taylor thought he would never be suspected, so he clearly hadn't had time to dispose of it. Not only that, but John's blood was also detected on another one of Taylor's shirts, so the evidence is conclusive. I sat there in the chair, unable to speak for a long time. Oh, and besides the murder weapon and the bloody shirt, we also found several blackmail letters in Taylor's house. Blackmail letters? Some colleagues had mentioned this when gossiping. Taylor had been secretly blackmailing your company's project manager, using his affair as leverage to extort money from him. To avoid being tracked, he asked the victim to convert the money into gold jewelry. We found some gold necklaces and bracelets in his house, and the victim identified them as the stolen goods. I never thought Taylor would do something like this. I mumbled, looking incredulous. After learning the whole story from Officer Tom, he saw me to the door. Before leaving, I wanted to use the restroom, and an officer led the way for me. After I left, Officer Tom took a deep breath and sighed. Both cases are closed. Why are you sighing? A more experienced senior officer walked over to him. Sir, I still feel like there are some unanswered questions, Tom admitted. Like what? I can't put my finger on it, but something feels off. The senior officer patted him meaningfully on the shoulder and said in an advisory tone, Tom, you're still young. You have plenty of energy. That's good. I was like you when I was young, with a fire in my heart. The case is closed smoothly, and the higher-ups are very satisfied. Sometimes the fire is too strong. It's not necessarily a good thing. Be careful not to burn yourself. Tom understood the meaning behind the senior officer's words. He nodded and didn't say anything more. And in the bathroom stall, I finally couldn't help but cover my mouth and laugh silently. Officer Tom's conclusion was correct. Everything was so logical and interconnected. But everything was based on one premise. If I were really blind, I'm not blind. Or more accurately, I'm not blind now. I was born with an eye disease and did lose my sight completely. However, things took a turn for the better when I went back to my hometown for treatment a while ago. The doctors tried a new medication on me, and it worked. I didn't tell anyone at first. For one, I wasn't sure if I could keep my cushy job where I just clocked in, chatted, and collected a few thousand yuan every month. Secondly, I had a mischievous streak. I wanted to see if anyone would notice anything different. So, when they asked how my checkup went, I'd shake my head sadly. Soon, I discovered a third reason to keep up the charade. People don't suspect the blind. I was astonished by how much ugliness people reveal when they think they aren't being watched. The pretty girl with tons of admirers picked her nose while chatting with me. My serious, unsmiling colleague rummaged through the trash next to his crush's desk when we were alone in the office. At restaurants, no one bothered to hide their phone's unlock code or even their payment pins from me. Hidden behind a shield of blindness, I became privy to everyone's secrets, private chat logs on computer screens, bank card pins, door codes, embarrassing habits. It was this way that I discovered our project manager's affair. He never hid his messages and photos with his mistress from me, not realizing I could see everything. Gradually, a different thought took root. I anonymously sent the project manager a blackmail letter, threatening to tell his wife about his affair unless he paid for my silence. I even instructed him to convert the cash into jewelry, necklaces, and bracelets, making it easier for me to resell. This became my lucrative side hustle. Ethan's report was my doing too. The kid uploaded a video of him torturing a cat right in front of me. I sent him a similar blackmail letter, threatening to expose him and ruin his life if he didn't pay up. He didn't budge, so I decided to teach him a lesson. Perhaps I'd gotten too greedy. Demanding money from the project manager repeatedly provoked him to fight back. The person who slipped into my room after the police left was clearly prepared. He wore a mask, a baseball cap, gloves, and shoe covers. He went straight for my phone, expertly unlocking it and backing up the data. I figured he was a private investigator. Luckily, I'd been cautious. Despite regaining my sight, my phone was still in accessibility mode for the visually impaired. I never kept anything incriminating on it. The P.I. left empty-handed, but I was shaken. I was under suspicion. If this continued, my secret would be out. I had to act fast. Taylor killing John presented an opportunity. I didn't immediately realize Taylor was the killer. I was more shocked than anyone by the message written in blood on the wall. The night John died, I come home in the dark. The moonlight filtering through the broken balcony door illuminated the living room clearly. There was no message on the wall. I knew the breathing I'd heard was just John snoring softly in his sleep, and the dripping was a leaky faucet in the kitchen. If the killer wasn't there, why write that message to mislead everyone? This puzzled me until I talked to Taylor and remembered a creepy story I'd read online. The horror lay in the girl sharing a room with the killer without knowing it. The killer wanted to hint at his presence. That was the purpose of the bloody message. Once I understood this, the killer's identity was almost obvious. Taylor, who'd been smoking beside me, was the only one with a solid alibi. Dead men tell no tales. Almost instantly, I formulated a plan. Kill Taylor and frame him for the blackmail. I arranged to have drinks with Taylor that evening. After we parted ways, I went to see Officer Tom. On my way, I rehearsed what to say. Outrightly accusing Taylor would be too suspicious. I didn't want to appear too clever and attract unwanted attention. Playing the role of a well-meaning fool who stumbled upon the truth would make the young officer more likely to believe me. Everything went according to plan. Tom's reaction told me he'd figured it out. With the groundwork laid with Tom, steering Taylor's death towards suicide would be easier. I lied to them. I hadn't told Taylor about my bloody message motive theory the previous night. We just chatted about meaningless things. While Taylor was in the bathroom, I slipped crushed sleeping pills into his drink. Like I said, people don't suspect the blind. Taylor lived in a new apartment with a keypad lock. Everyone kept their distance when he entered the code, except me. I stood beside him blindly, watching him type it in. Pretty convenient, huh? Now you understand why I kept up the act. In the dead of night, I snuck into Taylor's apartment, turned on the gas, and planted the blackmail letters and some of the jewelry. As Taylor died peacefully in his sleep, the weight of the blackmail scheme lifted from my shoulders. Now, I can take the remaining jewelry and start over somewhere new where no one knows me. I can use the cover of sight to slip back into the shadows. Who says being blind is bad? It's been wonderful. After the case was closed, I resigned from my job, citing psychological trauma. Surprisingly, in addition to my regular severance pay, I received an extra humanitarian compensation payment, a pleasant surprise. Officer Tom, having seen through the culprit's smokescreen, was promoted shortly after joining the force. When he learned I was moving back to my hometown to treat my condition, he invited me out to say goodbye. We met at the same cafe, and after exchanging pleasantries, Officer Tom said enthusiastically, "I really owe you for cracking this case." "Not at all. I'm just a clumsy detective who got the wrong suspect and was happy about it. It was all thanks to you, Officer Tom. Someone else might have been led astray by me." We both burst out laughing. Tom handed me a going-away present. "It's just a little something." "Officer Tom, you're too kind." I accepted it, unable to refuse. Just then, Tom's phone rang. "Excuse me, it's the precinct." He stepped outside to take the call. The waiter arrived to take our orders, and seeing that Tom would be a while, I took the liberty of ordering him an espresso, the same drink he'd ordered the previous 2 times. A few minutes later, Tom returned. "Trouble at work?" "Yeah, big case." "Officer Tom, you're so young and yet so talented. I'm sure no case is too difficult for you." He gave a wry smile. "Don't even get me started. I still have some questions about Taylor's case." I tensed up. "What questions?" "Sleeping pills. They found traces of sleeping pills in Taylor's system, but no pill bottles or boxes were found at his home. We even checked the trash. Where did Taylor get the pills?" My eye twitched nervously, thankfully hidden behind my sunglasses. "You don't think John was the one Taylor killed?" "No, Taylor was the killer. The bloody message motive, the motive for murder, and the physical evidence all point to him. I don't doubt that. Since Taylor killed John, doesn't it become a minor issue on where the sleeping pills came from?" "No, It's very important. The young officer's tone was serious, sending a chill down my spine. He continued, even if Taylor was the killer, it doesn't mean he committed suicide. Don't forget, he was also involved in an extortion case. Strangely, besides the 2 extortion letters and 2 necklaces, nothing else was found in the extortion case. I stayed calm, my voice steady. What exactly is bothering you? Isn't that evidence enough? The waiter brought our coffees. Tom rubbed his forehead and said to the waiter, "Could I have 2 sugar packets, please?" My mind was still on the previous conversation, and I interjected, "No need. I ordered it with sugar for you." "Oh, thanks. Where were we?" Right, I just felt that compared to what was found in John's death, there was too little in the extortion case. I was wondering if someone else might have taken advantage of Taylor's death. Is there any evidence that Taylor didn't commit suicide? Not yet. I've been poring over the files for days, but I can't get past the question of where the sleeping pills came from. I understand you suspect Taylor was murdered, and the person who killed him is the real culprit in the extortion case. I said it bluntly, knowing it was the best way to distance myself and dispel his suspicions. Indeed, hearing me say it so plainly, Tom fell silent. After a long pause, he looked up. Am I being too imaginative? Starting with a few sleeping pills and overturning a closed case? A bit, yes. We both laughed again. It's been great talking to you. You too. We chatted about other things and were surprised to discover we had many common interests. We could have been good friends, I thought. Finally, as we were leaving, we stood up to put on our coats. Tom took a large stride and handed me my cane, smiling. Thank you for your insights and for ordering my coffee. No problem. It was nothing, he said casually. By the way, how did you know I like my espresso with sugar? Huh? A smile froze on both our faces. I heard you order it. No, you didn't. What? I never ordered an espresso with sugar. Tom was still smiling, but the smile was slowly fading. I thought back to the previous 2 times. He was right. He hadn't ordered it. At least, he hadn't said it out loud. So why did I know he liked sugar? Because I saw it. I saw him take 2 sugar cubes each time, put them in his cup, stir, and dissolve them. Subconsciously, I had formed the impression that Officer Tom likes his espresso with sugar. When I ordered for him earlier, seeing no sugar packets on the table, I blurted it out. An espresso with sugar. I'll ask you again. How did you know? If you didn't hear it from me, then Tom's calm voice sent a shiver down my spine. Did you see it? Damn it. My heart nearly stopped. A cold sweat crept up my spine, like the prickling of needles. Across from my sunglasses, Officer Tom stared directly at me, his gaze unwavering, his expression turning cold. These eyes, having regained their sight, saw very clearly. His gaze was becoming colder and colder, like the winter that had just passed. In this chilly spring season, my clothes were once again soaked with cold sweat. The end.